Hey, Nish here, and today I've got a quick review of a laptop I bought a few months back, the HP Pavillion 14 with a Ryzen 7 5700U. I paid about €630 or roughly £500 for this laptop, and as far as the other specs go, it has 16 gigs of RAM, a 500 gig hard drive, and a 14-inch 1080p screen. Starting off with a physical tour of the laptop, we can see that it has an aluminium construction, it weighs in at 1.4 kilograms, so about mid-range there, and is reasonably slim. As far as ports go, you've got two full-size USB ports, one USB-C that can also act as a charging port, a headphone microphone combo, and the charging port. There is no card reader here like you get in some laptops. So I bought this laptop for general use and also for all of my video editing, and for this reason I wanted to get some reasonably beefy specs because I was really getting sick of having a very slow laptop that couldn't cope with the kind of tasks I was doing. If you want to understand a little bit more about my process in terms of buying a laptop and what kind of things I was looking for, I am going to make a video very soon about my tips and tricks for when you're looking to buy a new laptop. Speaking a little bit about the processor, the Ryzen 5000 series is typically considered to win over the Intel 11th gen series. Now, of course, in terms of processor generations, this changes year by year because, for example, right now, Intel 12th gen processors are being rolled out and they might be a lot better than Ryzen, but this processor, for example, has 8 cores and 16 threads, which means it's fairly beefy. Now, before I move on to talking about my experience with this laptop, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel if you like what you're seeing so far. It helps the videos get out there and the channel to grow, and I'd really appreciate it. So, subjectively speaking, I have been very impressed by the performance of this laptop. I do talk subjectively because I'm not one to run a load of synthetic benchmarks and things. There's probably videos that can do that, and you can look up websites. But for me, it has been blazingly fast, and particularly in video editing. So, for example, I use Sony Vegas, and I also do some audio editing in Ableton Live, and I have had zero performance issues. It is blazingly quick, and for example, I have no difference between this and the desktop i5 I used to use. Obviously, for your typical day-to-day tasks like documents, browsing, watching videos, it is gonna fly and it's not gonna struggle with any of those tasks. The 16 gigs of RAM has also been really useful. It gives me a lot of headroom to make sure I can multitask without needing to worry about that. Now, gaming wasn't something I was looking to use this laptop for, so I specifically wasn't really looking for specs that fit that. And truth be told, I think Intel 11th gen processors do typically have a better integrated graphics than the AMD offerings. The only games I've loaded on this laptop are I play a bit of Hearthstone every now and then, and it doesn't struggle with that because that's not a particularly taxing game. But I did try, for example, Path of Exile once, and it was really struggling with that. So I think, generally speaking, with this laptop, any kind of 3D games with decent graphics are not really going to run all that well. And if you are looking for gaming, this is definitely not the laptop for you. Let's talk about the screen on this laptop. Starting with the good, the bezels are fairly small. It's a matte anti-reflective coating, which is what I prefer on laptops by far. It means you don't have a lot of glare and reflections in the screen. It's also IPS, so this means that the viewing angles are pretty good. However, there are a couple things you should be aware of. Firstly, for video and photo professionals, the NTSC gamut of this screen is only 45%, which is considered pretty low. And this is a measure of the range of colors that the screen can produce. Now, for my fairly casual use, obviously day to day, you're not going to be like looking at a colorful picture and being like, there's just not enough colors. But, for professionals that are looking for that kind of thing, this screen might not be up to the tasks that they're looking to do. The other thing that might be a bit more of a practical issue is the brightness of the screen. It only goes to 250 nits, which is the typical unit of brightness. And this is, it's fairly average. It's not special, it's not particularly high, but it's not stupidly low. I think indoors you're never really going to have problems with this. It's when you take it outdoors that brightness becomes more important, because in the outdoors there tends to be a lot more sun and you need more brightness on the screen to make sure that you can see it properly. Another gripe I did have with the screen is more of the hardware aspect, and that is the hinge. So the hinge on this laptop doesn't go very far. It maybe goes about 100 degrees or maybe a teeny bit more. And this isn't a big deal, but the issue it caused me is I use a little laptop riser to use with my monitor and put the laptop on the same level with the screen as the monitor, but I can't do that with this laptop because I can't open the laptop's hinge wide enough, and I don't have the same problem with my work laptop. Now, I'm not sure if this style of hinge, it's a cost-cutting measure because maybe it's quite expensive to make a hinge that opens up all the way. It's something I didn't actually notice until I bought the laptop and brought it home, which was a little bit of a disappointment, but I do understand if it is a budget-oriented laptop, then they might cut these corners, but it's something worth noting. As far as some of the other physical features of the laptops go, the trackpad is decent, it's a decent size, it tracks well, shortcuts and things work well. The buttons are a tiny bit mushy, a little bit more mushy than I'd like, but I don't use the trackpad a lot, so it's not a big deal for me. The keyboard as well, no complaints there. Also worth saying, on the keyboard you do have all the media keys you could possibly need, and that's quite useful. But yeah, I really would recommend checking out the laptop in a store and having a quick play around typing and moving the mouse. Now the speakers are branded Bang & Olufsen on this laptop. I don't know if that really means anything at all, but I was pleasantly surprised by them. They get reasonably loud, they don't distort, especially compared to the Asus VivoBook I used to have. Those speakers didn't get very loud at all, whereas the ones on here are very good. And I do think it seems like small speakers have got really good in the last 5 to 10 years. Lastly, the battery. So this is a 45 watt hour battery, which is pretty average as far as batteries go. The battery life is not outstanding, but it's decent because these AMD processors are reasonably power efficient. I find with mixed use I can get about 3 to 4 hours, but you know, when you're doing simpler tasks such as watching videos, it will last a lot longer, and that's good to see. Now, I would usually talk about competitors and other options, but I would say it depends on what kind of region you're in and what the prices are like. I think a lot of laptop manufacturers, at least for me, are quite good. So for me, HP, Asus, Acer, they typically make some decent laptops, and it comes down to, you know, finding a good deal with some specs, and that was certainly what happened in my case. I would recommend checking out the laptop tip buyer guide type video that I've yet to name, which will be coming out soon on the channel. Do subscribe so you don't miss that. To conclude, in my experience, the HP Pavillion 14, it fits this niche, which is just like a budget laptop which has some pretty beefy specs that can handle quite a lot of things you throw at it. It's not without its weaker points. I think the screen on here is one area that has room for improvement, but apart from that, a lot of the physical features of the laptop are pretty good, and I've been pleasantly happy with this, especially considering the amount I paid. Okay, so I hope this has been a useful video. Laptop reviews aren't my usual style of video because I don't typically tend to buy them that often, so it's hard to build up a knowledge base of what's good and what's bad. But do give me some feedback if you thought it was useful or not, and I'd really appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel for more to the point content, and I'll catch you in the next one.